Tonight's episode is brought to you by Leap Spirits. Not only does September bring the start of football regular season, but for fans of Leap Spirits and Green Bay Packers, you know what? It was a great month. This month, it was a great month last month because Packers legend and Leap Spirits co-founder Leroy Butler was enshrined in the NFL Hall of Fame back in August.
Yeah, and Dane, to commemorate the special occasion and gear up for football season, Leap Spirits created a Hall of Fame limited edition bottle featuring Leroy. This special edition bottle comes with the same great recipe distilled from Midwest corn and incorporating a proprietary coconut filtering process that provides vibrant fragrance and flavor. Not only is it a must-have in any Packers fans' home bar as we gear up for football season, when it's gone, this bottle is going to make the perfect addition to your memorabilia collection.
It's so good, it goes fast too, doesn't it, Wags? Leap Vodka, it's been recognized for excellence by industry experts from coast to coast and was also recently awarded Wisconsin's #1 vodka of the year. So folks, to find Leap Vodka and Leap and Lemonade in a retail store or restaurant anywhere in Wisconsin, visit leapspirits.com and click to find Leap Vodka. See show notes for details.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go pack go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck. Only thing I will.
Hi, welcome to Lombardi's Legends Podcast. Dane here as always with my great friend Wags. Wags, listen, we're coming in. It's a new week. Dropped one last week, but we're previewing week 2 this week against the Chicago Bears. After a couple days off, how are you feeling going into week 2?
Ready to put that one behind us. It was always nice to recap. I know folks might think, well, it must really suck to recap after the Packers lose, but it's very therapeutic. So I'm very grateful that we were able to do that and move on. And the good news is we're coming back to Lambeau, Dane, and I switched up my hat. Apparently the Packers cap was bad luck last week, so we'll give this one a try and see how we're doing here during week 2.
We're not superstitious here. We're just a little stitious. And, you know, the Packers coming off that difficult game in week 1, but I think a lot of reason for optimism right away. Wags, I just think we're playing an inferior opponent this week. I'm just going to come out and say it right away. The Bears were able to surprise, I think, a lot of folks in week 1 in Chicago, beating the San Francisco 49ers. But quite frankly, they were playing in like monsoon style conditions. Coming to Lambeau, it looks like it's going to be a clear day. I think it's going to be a tough matchup for the Bears when I look across their roster. But obviously, and maybe we start here, is the offensive line for the Green Bay Packers, because that was a situation that we ran into last week. That was a huge challenge. So what do you know about it so far this week, Wags? I know practice, they're still working through some things, but how do you feel? What's the injury situation look like? And if you don't mind giving us a quick update on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, so David Bakhtiari didn't practice today. They made it sound like it was a planned day off. So take what you will of that. I would have to say early, we're looking like, and it was already predicted by several beat writers last week, right before the game, after it was announced that he and Alton Jenkins were going to be out, that likely is probably going to be the same thing for week 2. So nothing in his practice status so far this week leads me to believe that he's going to play. Now, here's the question we've talked offline. I know there's a lot of Packer fans that are frustrated out there that David, by all accounts, is coming off of a third surgery that happened back in April. And he's been practicing for a month now. And so it's maybe a little puzzling to figure out what exactly is the nature of this rehabilitation that he's able to go out there and practice for a month, but isn't ready on Sunday. So, I'm not questioning the process, but I think there's a lot of confusion, and rightfully so, out there that this is related to his original ACL injury. Folks, it's not related to the original ACL injury. But then that also begs the question, is this a chronic knee issue that he's dealing with, or is this all just part of the rehab process? And it was really the plan all along that it was going to take him 3, 4, 5 weeks of ramp up time to be ready to go. And that's assuming that he's ready to go this Sunday or even in the subsequent couple of weeks, because this is starting to feel, Dane, a lot like last season.
Yes.
Where we thought he was going to be back by week 7, 8, maybe was a little bit optimistic, but would give us half the season. Come back to practice and it's just off and on. And all of a sudden, we get to week 17 before he's even able to give us a little bit out on the field. So Elton could be ramping up. He's been practicing. So if he's ready to go, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Elton Jenkins out there. I'm feeling less optimistic with David Bakhtiari's status personally. And then I want to get your feelings on that too. John Runyon Jr. is still in the concussion protocol. So if he doesn't clear and doesn't practice by tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Zach Tom make his first NFL start at left guard on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, this is not how we wanted to start the year, right? I mean, we're sitting here with our 2 premier offensive linemen, more or less unlikely to play. I would agree with you. I think Elton Jenkins is probably more likely to play this week than David Bakhtiari at this point. And there's a good chance Elton Jenkins just is back well before David Bakhtiari is, right? And probably ends up at that right tackle spot. I mean, I'm getting to the point where I'm not sure what the difference a couple days make here and there as the season starts if Bakhtiari isn't ready yet. So I'm wondering if long-term we're going to see, more likely of a Yash Nyman left tackle, Elton Jenkins right tackle. And maybe that's why we saw Yash playing so much left tackle all throughout camp, right? We can only glom so much on, but he's been getting a ton of run all camp and is clearly settling into that position. So, it's concerning though. It's also concerning that Runyon's not going to be able to go because now we're really digging into 6, 7, and 8 on our depth chart, right? And we're getting a first career start to Zach Tom, and we're going to be very likely playing with that same right side of the offensive line that had so many issues in week 1 with Hansen at guard and with Royce Newman over there at right tackle. So it's just not the strongest 5 that I think that we were hoping for. The Packers elevated Caleb Jones off the practice squad. He is now on the active roster. We've already got Rasheed Walker was another guy on this offensive line. So, I'm not sure, Wags, if we're not going to continue to see some musical chairs as the season goes on until we get our healthy 5 guys in there. And that's a bit of a concern because Aaron was running for his life in week 1. And, we can still will about the wide receivers, but just doesn't have time to deliver. It doesn't matter how good or bad wide receivers are. The quarterback's not going to be able to consistently get the ball to his receiving side.
All right. So, Dane, you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if that goes on my end, but check that connection over there. We're going to keep going. I think the question that I have is with David, just to go back to him, and we don't need to dwell on this because this is all, we don't have any more information, but I think the question that you and I and a lot of Packer fans out there are trying to figure out is, this isn't a soft tissue injury. So this isn't an ankle that, he sprained a few weeks ago and some additional rest is going to help him. He's been out there practicing. Again, I know I just said this, but he's been practicing for a month now. And so then what is exactly the plan and the process? That's what's puzzling to me because David Bakhtiari played an awful lot of football. I have a hard time believing that he really needs a month to be ready to play in the game. But then if he's healthy enough to go out there and take practice reps, then why isn't he healthy enough after a month of practice to be out there on Sunday? So that's what I'm puzzling. And there's got to be more to this that we're not hearing about. And I understand that the Packers aren't going to say anything more than what they have. But I think it's fair, Dane, do you agree that it's fair to question the process here, because it just logically doesn't really make a lot of sense? And I'm not a doctor, so I'm not, and we don't know, we're not privy to all the details, but
Mhm.
this is what I said a few months ago. Could it be that this is just a chronic inflammation, and David at some point is going to have to decide, is this something I'm going to play through or is it not? And I know that might be a little bit unfair to throw out there, but that's the reality, or it could be the reality. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out, is we're 5 months removed from his surgery, and that was a cleanup procedure. I just, and he's been practicing for a month. Something tells me that this isn't a normal, rest and rehabilitation situation. There's more that's going on here, and I don't mean to be cynical about it, but Dane, what do you think about that? Or
No, I think it's
you
fair.
know,
I think it's completely fair what you're saying, because why we have to be able to speculate at a certain point. He's not able to go, and he hasn't been able to go. And I just, at a certain point, what's the deal, right? And the Packers have been, I think, particularly vague on the subject. They're not very direct with it. And now they're saying, oh, this is part of the plan. Oh, he's not gonna practice 3 days in a row and all that. It's just, this isn't how superstar athletes normally are handled coming back from an injury. And I guess that's what I'm looking at. I'm not looking at David. I'm looking at the knowledge base of every other athlete that we've seen over the course of, our almost 40 years on earth. Like, this just isn't how it's normally done. So that's what really gives me a cause for concern at this point. It's been a long time, and he just doesn't seem ready to go yet.
yeah, and this is how it started last season too, where it
Exactly.
was just, oh, this is a planned day off, and then they shut him down for a week. So I'm going to be very curious to see what happens here. But it's, you always say actions are louder than words, and
Mhm.
if David Bakhtiari is not out there practicing all of a sudden, I think that tells you all you have to know. So
Exactly.
that being said, I think it's fair to say that we'll plan to go into this week most likely without him, and Elton perhaps is a 50-50. They might be playing that one close to the vest, but perhaps he's ready to go, perhaps not. Dane, if he's not out there, do you think we're going to see that same look? Assume that John Run Jr. doesn't clear, or even if he's cleared,
Yeah.
they decide he hasn't practiced all week, he's not ready to go, or he's a kind of an emergency backup. If it's, do you agree that it would be Zach Tom at left guard in that situation? And then we're going to go out there again. We saw that right side of the line with Royce Newman at right tackle, and with Jake Hansen at right guard, had a lot of trouble at times last week against the Vikings. Does that give you any cause for concern, or do you think there was just some things that they'll be able to clean up and improve on performance-wise against the Bears?
No, I mean, pause for concern might be an understatement from my perspective. I just don't think Royce Newman's a right tackle in the league. I think he's a guard, and I think he can be an effective guard. But I'm not sure if the Packers' right side would look all that much better going into week 2. Granted, they're not playing the same level of talent as the Minnesota Vikings pass rushers. But no, I mean, I think ideally I would have liked, obviously, running back at left guard and Zach Tom kicked out to right tackle, Royce Newman bumping back into right guard. That would have been my ideal scenario if Elton Jenkins and David Bakhtiari don't go. So no, I think that, that will completely shape the game plan. If this is the scenario we have with Zach Tom playing left guard there. And I mean, all of a sudden we're going to have Jake Hansen, who's been in the league for a few years, but second start of his career is going to be at right guard. We're going to have Zach Tom with his first start at left guard, and Royce Newman's second start at right tackle in his career. I mean, it's just a inexperienced offensive line at this point, and it is a cause for concern. So Packers, Rodgers going to have to get the ball out of his hands, and somehow we're going to need to set the tone with the run game early and often. But this Packers offense is going to have to be creative, Wags, because I'm not confident that Aaron's going to have 4 or 5 seconds to sit back there and make the big throw with the current offensive line as it's assembled. Down the road, could we get there? Yeah. Week 2, I'm just not confident after what we witnessed in week 1.
Yeah, so I think that's a good segue into some of the key matchups because it looks like we've got pretty good news for the rest of the injury report
Huge
for the other
news.
positions. Yeah, so you say that the Bears defensive line doesn't have quite the performance as the Vikings did, and I agree when you look across the board. But
Mhm.
Robert Quinn, coming off a career year last year with 18 and a half sacks, is
Yes.
going to be a problem if we don't have a plan for cleaning up some of those pass blocking situations and making sure that you're in the right position. And look, I mean, even a guy like Afadin Muhammad comes over from Indianapolis, not known as a huge sack guy, but a veteran player. And he's always been kind of in that Preston Smith mold, I would say,
He's a really
in terms
good.
of his pressures and his sack numbers. Not a traditional high leverage edge rusher, but if if you've got some holes and you're not able to clean some things up between those two, they could still give us a problem. And I'll tell you what, Robert Quinn's had some nice performances against the Packers over the years. So I'm not without concern
Yeah,
with the
sure.
talent that we're going to be facing here, especially looking at the tape, the way the Vikings were able to move some guys around, exploit some of those mismatches in certain down and distance situations. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Bears copy that and have Robert Quinn moving around and seeing how they can put him in the best position to exploit some of those mismatches. So, Dane, when you look at this Bears defensive front,
Yeah.
is it going to be incumbent on the Packers to, back up what they said post game and get that run game established here against the Bears, or are they going to come out firing and try to really push the ball downfield against this Bears secondary and hope that kind of puts these guys a little bit back in position and they're not really just able to pin their ears back?
Wags, I've got to think they start with the run game. The one of the positives from week one, again, folks, small sample size, but if Zach Tom does end up starting at left guard, I did really like the pairing in the run game of Yash Nyman and Zach Tom. I thought that they were able to make some push, certainly in the early in the second half when they were able to get together. I'd like to explore that a little bit more. As much maligned as the right side of the offensive line is, I think that those two together can make a pretty formidable run game there. So I would love to start there. And we said it last week, man. Aaron Jones needs to touch that ball more often, and AJ Dillon I thought had an appropriate amount of touches, but Aaron Jones just needs to get those touches. I would love for the Packers to come out and just commit to Aaron Jones getting some of those carries between the tackles in addition to AJ Dillon. The pass game's going to open up. I assure you it's going to, but I think that we set the tone with the run at home at Lambeau Field early. And if we can get the play action going a little bit as the game progresses, that's going to be lethal. But Wags, I don't think in my eyes with the state of the current offensive line, I'm not confident. All right, Aaron, you're going to go throw the ball 45 times today. I think it's let's set the tone. Let's run the ball. Probably our two most talented offensive players outside of Aaron Rodgers are our running backs. So let's ride that wave and let those guys set the tone of this game.
Yeah, it's easier said than done. You got a guy
Mm-hmm.
like Raycon Smith in the middle at the second level, certainly one of the most productive linebackers in the league over the last several seasons. And the one thing that you don't want to do is get into situations where you're putting yourself in more challenging down and
Sure.
distances by saying we need to establish the run.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds good on paper, and I'm not faulting you because I agree with you. However, it's still a league where passing on first down tends to be the direction that you want to go offensively in order to have success moving the football. So it is going to be interesting to see how they manage that because Aaron Jones is a big key to me this week. And whether it means more touches on the ground running the ball or more touches through the air, I think either way, they're going to need to get him more involved.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps we see a little bit more of both he and Dylan on the field at the same time. We saw a lot of that last week, but I think we could see even more of that with some, basically 12 or 13 personnel, have both he and Dylan in the backfield. You've got your Robert Tunyon, you've got your Josiah DeGuara out there, and that gives you a lot of versatility, as you said, not only to run the ball because you've got your blockers then, but you've got play action on either direction of the field with those tight ends and both of those running backs.
Yeah.
So it puts a lot more pressure on the defense when they've got to cover sideline to sideline like that. And that's what some of those personnel groupings can accomplish. So I agree. And I think that is certainly one direction that the Packers can go as they're making adjustments coming into this game.
I have a question for you, Wags, as we talk about the run game, but the inverse with the pass here. Do you see the Packers wide receivers being able to take advantage of a less than deep defensive backfield for the Chicago Bears? I mean, we know who Eddie Jackson is, but a lot of these DBs are not guys that are necessarily household names at this point, much like the Packer wide receivers. But do you see a scenario where, Aaron's able to gain some confidence in week 2 and using this as a bit of a launching pad with some of these young wide receivers?
Yeah, but it's still going to be a learning curve, is what I would guess. What I would like to see is that Aaron is looking at Romeo Doubs as one of his first 2 options. It seemed like he might have been further down in the progression on a number of those plays that he was out there. And instead of looking at Randall Cobb or Sammy Watkins as the first or second in the progression, maybe it's Romeo Doubs. If he's drawing the Bears' third best corner or Christian Watson, that might be where we're able to exploit the mismatches. And I understand that he was a little bit, and I'm talking about Aaron, a little bit frustrated with some of the mental mistakes, and maybe they weren't lined up or running the right route on certain plays. But he's going to have to live with that, because what I saw a lot was Randall Cobb and Sammy Watkins are not at the point where they're able to create a lot of separation on their own. And so it's going to be incumbent on those 2 young guys to be able to stretch the defense a little bit. And until they're able to do that and get in sync with number 12, defenses aren't going to respect what they're able to do downfield. And that's not going to open up some of those short and intermediate routes for guys like Watkins or even Alan Lazard that looks like he'll be ready to come back this week, or Randall Cobb. So to me, Dane, it's really about getting those reads, and I just hopefully those guys being able to get a little bit more in sync and build more confidence and trust with their quarterback. The more they can do that, the better we're going to be in terms of opening things up with this offense. I also would say, Dane, I just want to throw this back at you. What is the impact of Alan Lazard coming back? Because he's not one of those guys that we think of as able to create that separation on his own, but obviously he's got the chemistry, and he's another very productive receiver that is someone that we expect to be on the same page with number 12. So what impact could that have this week if he's able to go as well?
Well, Wags, he's such an interesting figure, I think, to me, Lazard. There's been a couple times in his career where it looks like he's about to take off, and then he's had kind of these freak injuries where they take him out for a few games. So as much as I feel like we know who Lazard is, I also think that there's some untapped potential there. I think he can be a 1,000-yard wide receiver in the league. I'm not saying he's a 1,500-yard guy and, 12 touchdown guy, but I think that he can be a consistent wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers and be a weapon who catches the ball, helps move the chains, and can make some big plays here and there, in addition to his blocking and, some of his intermediary routes. So I think that he's going to be an important piece to this offense because, it's another guy that Rodgers, I think, has a lot of trust in, and somebody that I think Rodgers is going to try to fit the ball into some tight spaces. So, anytime he has that kind of guy, it may potentially open up some of the rest of the offense when he's got somebody who can, maybe win a one-on-one, and we've seen him do it before. So I'm eager to see how Alan Lazard fits in to to this new Packer offense. It's old offense, but anything, it's post Devontae offense, right? So we're going to see for the first time what Allen's going to be able to do in this. But I think that Rodgers has a lot of trust in him, and from that aspect, I think there's nowhere to go but up. From that perspective. So let's see what Allen can do. But I do think he can also potentially open things up for some of these other young guys. You mentioned Dobbs, who I'm eager to see, but I'm really excited to see Christian Watson because, he's somebody that if he catches that ball last week, everybody's talking about, oh my gosh, Christian Watson, this and that. He dropped the ball and he goes, in the mulligan category now. So I want to see him be able to put it together. He did the hard stuff last week. If they're focusing on Lazard a little bit more, does that mean Watson gets to eat a little bit more? Remains to be seen. But I think the Packers wide receivers stack up well against this Chicago Bears defensive backfield.
Yeah. Okay, so Dane, I think we should take a break here and talk about our sponsors, starting with DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NFL. And right now with DraftKings, NFL's opening week was action-packed and just getting started. Get ready for week 2 of touchdowns, big plays, even bigger wins with DraftKings Sportsbook. With our promo code TPPN, you can make a bet of $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly.
Wags, do you want more action? I mean, everyone can experience Thrill DraftKings early win promotion. And it's simple, folks. This Sunday, bet on any NFL team to win. If your team leads by 10 at any point during the game, you get paid instantly, even if your team loses. So, folks, please listen to me. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code TPPN to get $200 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet on any football game. That's code TPPN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL.
Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, so Dane, let's also talk about our other sponsor that we wanted to hit on, Raycon. Of course, Raycon Headphones. They've got some awesome earbuds out there, and I'm sporting them now. But Dane, just some really good features, very crisp sound, and I think that these are just awesome in terms of just listening quality, your favorite podcast, your favorite music. I really can't go anywhere without them. Love to wear the Raycon headphones while I'm out walking my dog. And Dane, what is your favorite feature of these headphones?
Oh, Wags. I'll tell you what, I've got a 2.5-year-old kid at home, so it's the noise isolation is what I am all about. They work incredibly well. The kid's throwing a tantrum upstairs, doesn't want to go to bed. I can turn on some music and just chill out. So I love these Raycon headphones too, Wags. I think they're super cool. And listen, they play forever. That's what I really like about these, man. It's like, folks, if you haven't used these before, 8 hours of playtime and a 32-hour battery life. So if you're like me, you forget to charge things. These are a great, great, great thing to purchase. So please check out Raycon headphones.
Yep, absolutely. So go to buyraycon.com today and use code TPPN15 to get 15% off your Raycon order. That's code TPPN15 at buyraycon.com to score 15% off. Buyraycon.com, code TPPN15. All right, so Dane, let's go over to the Bears offense against this Packer defense. And I got to tell you right off the top, I know that there's lots of Bear fans out there that like to compare Justin Fields and what he's doing to our backup quarterback in Jordan Love. So I think that says a lot. But that said, I watched some of that Bears game against the 49ers last week. And even though it was a monsoon and you really can't take a lot out of what happened in that game, to be honest, I was pretty impressed with how Justin Fields carried himself and was very composed. And it seems like he was able to be a big part of the Bears comeback and really putting a stamp on that week 1 win.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, all the more reason that our young rookie Walker coming back, I think it'd be really helpful for this Packers defense. Obviously, we don't want to see a young guy's growth get stunted by an injury early in his career, but if he's able to bounce back in week 2, I think he could be one of the prime reasons for a Packer victory. And the reason I say that is because Fields is really good with his legs. And Wags, to your point, watching him, I watched a lot of that game too because I knew we were going to be playing the Bears. He moves incredibly well when he takes off and he makes a decision to run. He can be exceedingly dangerous. And that's where I think that Walker, so fast sideline to sideline, he's somebody that could really, really cause some difficulty for him, because if you let Justin Fields settle in, he's like any other NFL quarterback, right? He's going to make a lot more than he misses. So I think the Packers, it's going to be incumbent on Joe Barry to come up with a more creative defensive scheme than what he did in week 1, which I was just exceedingly underwhelmed by. But B, we're going to need to pressure Fields and not let him beat us during some of the broken plays, because that's where he really takes off. So if the Packers can contain him in the pocket and get some hits on Fields early, I really like our chances. I don't think that there's a lot of mismatches at the skill positions for the Bears, but really, it really starts and ends with Justin Fields' athleticism. And if he can beat the Packers with his legs as much as with his arm.
Yeah, I think they don't have a lot of skill position mismatches. That's a bit of an understatement. So that's about as complimentary as we're going to get now after just hyping up Justin Fields. I think the biggest concern I would have is with his legs. We've seen that over the years, and quarterbacks that have that mobility, they get out of the pocket, and that put a lot of stress on this 3-4 defense. You highlighted Quay Walker. He's a big part, I think, of being able to contain Justin Fields, and obviously Devondre Campbell. So those guys being able to range and cover that flat and that second level can really help in that containment. So that's going to be a big part, I think, of the game plan this week. Wide receivers, if we can't respond after last week and that debacle, I mean, you're looking at really Emmanuel. I'm sorry, in terms of on the Bears sideline, Mooney is the guy, Darnell Mooney, and he's not a world beater by any means. So, folks, Equimania St. Brown is their number 2 receiver.
How is that? I mean, I that blows my mind. I'm not trying to pile on the guy, but like, how is he the number 2 receiver in the NFL? I just don't get it.
That's a good question. I think Cole Kmet has potential as a solid tight end in this league, but he's still a pretty young guy and hasn't really shown it from a production standpoint. I feel like the Packers are pretty well matched up against him with our guys in the middle as well as Adrian Amos over the top. So he doesn't. He might make some catches, but he doesn't give me a lot of concern, considering the Bears just really don't have guys on the outside to put a lot of stress or pressure on this defense. So I expect not only a response due to some of the underwhelming performance that our secondary gave us last week, but quite honestly, just because the talent disparity between this Packers secondary and this Bears set of wide receivers is such that there really is no excuse if they're not able to pretty much, really not only just contain, but frankly, they should be shutting down a wide receiver group of this caliber.
You know who I want to see step up is on the back end, Adrian Amos. And I thought he had probably the worst game I've seen him play in green and gold last week. He just looked out of sorts, looked out of position. There was a lot of confusion, and that is so not his MO. That it was odd to see. I expect a big bounce back week for Adrian against his former team. So that's somebody to take a look at, Wags. I think in the back end, I think he's going to be flying around this week, and he's going to have a chip on his shoulder after what we saw. And to your point, man, our cornerbacks should be matching up man-to-man with these guys and dominating. There should be dominating performance this week against this wide receiver group. And if there's continues to be miscommunication, that's a big red flag for me going into the rest of the season, because we have too much talent on this defense to get pushed around by this type of Chicago Bears offense.
Yeah, and I think another response I want to see is from the defensive line.
Yes.
They had some moments early in the game that they were able to do pretty well against the run, but just didn't really see the overall pressure and push throughout the 4 quarters last week. And that was this was a group. Remember, coming into week 1, that defensive coordinator Joe Barry classified as special. I mean, I don't think Joe Barry just throwing that out there.
Mhm.
So it's not just our secondary, our defensive line, contain and coverage starts with pressure on the quarterback. And so the defensive line is the first mode of defense, if you will. And so they need to be putting pressure on Justin Fields and not giving him time to roll around out there and wreak havoc. So I expect a big response from the guys up front. And I'm not just talking about Rashawn Gary or Preston Smith,
Right.
I'm talking about all the way across that defensive line. So the Bears O-line did okay last week. Again, conditions, it's really hard to measure. 49er front is usually pretty good at getting pressure. They gave a couple sacks, but with the condition of the field and the weather, it was nobody was really able to get any traction, particularly in the second half. So not really sure how much I would read into that, but the defensive line needs to respond in a big way.
Yeah, and looking at that group, I mean, I just look at the offensive line for the Bears, and I think that Kenny Clark should feast this week in the interior. He had 6 pressures last week against the Vikings, and I don't see why he doesn't have something similar this week based on the talent across from him. I just think Kenny Clark across both lines is probably the best guy on the field.
Yep, absolutely. So, Dane, is it time?
Yeah, let's
I
do it,
think we
man.
should get into our Leap Spirits X Factors of the week. Leap Spirits commemorative Leroy Butler bottle is in stores now. To find Leap Spirits at a location near you, go to leapspirits.com and click on Find Leap Spirits. So, Dane, I'm going to tee this up. Let's stick with the defense first this week. I'm really curious to hear who you have highlighted as a potential defensive X factor going into week 2 here against the Bears.
Wags, that's a really, really good question. I thought you were going to go offense on me. So now I'm a little thrown through a loop, but I'm going to stick with who I mentioned earlier. I think it's Adrian Amos. I think that after a really tough week last week, he bounces back. He's got to be kind of the captain of that defensive backfield there. He's going to be a guy who's going to make sure that the guys are in order. I wouldn't be surprised, playing against former team, these guys always seem to find a little extra juice when they do that. So all of the above, I think Fields is going to be under a lot of disarray in the game, and Amos might be the guy to capitalize on that. So Adrian Amos is my Leap Spirits X Factor going into week 2.
All right, fantastic. I was a little bit torn on this one. It'd be sexier to pick one of our secondary guys, perhaps get an interception, pick 6, whatever. I'm going to go a little boring, and I'm going to go Dean Lowry. And here's why. Veteran guy, seemed invisible, just didn't see him out there. He's got to hold himself and the rest of the defensive line to a higher standard. And I really think that Dean Lowry, he's been a solid teammate, a good leader. He's going to come out, and I think he's going to make an impact in terms of playing at a high intensity level and just set the tone. Certainly, he's not the star of that defensive line group. I completely understand that, but I think he can be a tone setter. And usually when we see Dean Lowry getting pressures, getting into the backfield, and making his presence felt at times throughout the game, that's a good sign. I don't mean that as a pejorative way, but I really think that he can be someone that all of a sudden you said, where was that last week? So I'm going to go with Dean Lowry this week as my defensive X factor.
Just watch. Dean Lowry's going to have like 2 sacks and a fumble recovery for a touchdown.
Fumble. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Why not? I'm 1 for 1 in my defensive X factor prediction, by the way. So not that I'm
who's counting.
Yeah. All right. So, Dane, I'll take the lead here on the offensive side of the ball. I'm just going to go with Alan Lazard. It looks like he's going to play, so I hope I didn't just jinx him. But I think it will be easy to point to after this game and say, oh, that makes a difference. I don't think, and I said this last week, and I really mean this, Alan Lazard isn't the Devontae Adams-ish wide receiver 1 in terms of what we expect him to make in as an impact. in a single game or throughout the season. However, I think he can have kind of a settling and calming impact. He's got that great connection with Aaron Rodgers. You know that he knows where he's going to be, and that just gives a little bit of a jolt of confidence, I think, for this Packer passing game. And it might also give a little bit of confidence to some of our young guys, because all of a sudden they can go out there in certain groupings and they're consistently going to get the third or the fourth or even the fifth corner lining up against them. And that just kind of resets the order and takes a little bit of pressure off those younger guys. And all of a sudden, they're going to get open, and it just makes things easier for everyone in this offense. So I'm going to go with Alan Lazard. I think he can have a nice return to action this week, get in the end zone. He's a nice red zone threat. And so I think he's going to get in the end zone this week and make his presence felt immediately with this Packers offense.
That'd be great. I love to hear that. I really do. I think that's a good selection, Wags. I'm going to go different position group, and really, I think it's because I thought he had a really solid week 1, and he's going to build off that going into week 2. I'm going to go with Josiah DeGuara, Wags. I thought that last week he had a couple nice catches. I was actually shocked last week when you told me how few snaps he had compared to a couple of the other tight ends, compared to Mercedes Lewis and Tunyon, because I thought that that just showed me that every time he was on the field, he was popping. He seemed like he was on the field more than the snap count showed. So going into this week, I wouldn't be surprised to see him in the backfield a little bit in that kind of that fullback role, but also get into kind of that tight end role and that H-back role as well. We've seen over the course of this rivalry that the Packers can go to some of those tight end positions. I think of Dominic Daphne a couple of years ago. This week, I think it's going to be Josiah DeGuara building off of week 1, starting to come into his own. I think he actually has a real shot at a touchdown, Wags, and kind of one of those short line touchdown passes from Aaron Rodgers. So Josiah DeGuara, not only that, but also on special teams. I just think that he's going to be a guy who's going to stand out this week. So he's going to be my offensive Leaf Spirits X factor for week 2.
All right, so put your name on it. I like it. There you go, folks. So score predictions. Dane, I let it off last week, so I'm going to put this on you. How big of a blowout are you predicting here against the Bears in week 2?
Well, first of all, I love David, and thanks everybody, Shadi, John, all these awesome guys coming on our pod. We're doing this live right now, so thank you for jumping on. David said if we lose, I need vodka. Well, Leap Spirits vodka. Go get some, David. It's delicious. So my prediction for this week, it's going to be 28-17 Green Bay Packers. I'm not even sure if it's that close of a game, but I think the Packers defense plays really well, gives some short fields for Aaron Rodgers in this offense. I'm not sure if the offense gets cooking right away, Wags, but I think by the mid-second quarter, we start playing downhill. Fields gets a little bit hurried, and we take advantage of some mistakes late, really take care of business. The Packers look a little bit better in week 2, obviously, and they come out with a victory.
Okay. I think the offense, I'm not going to predict big points for them, but this is not that close, Dane. All right. It's going to be 31-3 by the start of the fourth quarter. Yeah, it's 31-10 is going to be the final. Bears can get a late garbage time touchdown. Let's not stop messing around. We're going to respond in a big way this week. And this defense is not giving up 17 points to this Bears offense. If that happens, I will eat my words, Dane, but I will actually be upset in victory if we only win 28-17. I want a smackdown. Let's take care of business. Okay. And let's get out there. The offense may not be perfect this week. I get that. But I expect the defense to just lay the hammer down against this Bears team. And this is not going to be a close game. So I'm putting my name on it. Normally we try to be a little bit conservative.
No, not today, baby. Nice job,
we think this Packer team, and even if they are going to take a bit to get to that finished product over the course of the season, but if this Packer team, I know the Bears beat the 49ers last week, whatever, throw that out. The weather, Soldier Field, it was a disaster. The Packers should not be allowing this Bears team to be anywhere close to competing. And if they do, I'm going to have a heck of a lot more concern when we come back next week and do the recap than I did even in the week 1 loss. So, Dane, I'm throwing it out there. Let's coast to an easy win. We're going to feel a lot better about this defense after week 2 than we did in week 1.
Wags. We did it again. Preview complete. Folks, we'll be back Monday evening, 7:30 to recap the Packers' hopefully huge win against the Chicago Bears. Thank you so much for following us. Find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Always drop us a line. Thank you. We love you all for following us. It's already week 2 in the NFL. Say it, Wags. Bring us home.
Yep. As always, be legendary and go Pack,
Go,
go.
Pack, go.
Every year I know we gonna go hard. We been that team ever since Bart started. All my cheese heads go Pack go. Ain't showing no mercy, cutting no slack, no. I ain't a bad sport and I'll even wish you good luck.